Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the Community Stakeholder Outreach Meeting. And if you would click on the Got It that just popped up on your screen, we're going to be recording this and placing it on our website for others who aren't able to attend to be able to view this. And again, Perry Clausen, Executive Director of Valley Water Collaborative. Welcome. Thanks for coming today. And what we're going to do before we get started is I want to quickly go around the virtual and the live room, starting in the live room, and do quick introductions. Tell us your name and your affiliation, and any other quick comment you want to have about things you're interested in, or just a name and title, if you wouldn't mind. And I'm going to ask Maureen to go around the room in the office in Modesto.
Great. Hi, everyone virtually, and hello to everybody in the room. So Eva, want to start with you, and we'll just go right around in a circle and move to Zoom.
Sure. My name is Eva Dwyer. I'm Assistant Program Manager with Valley Water Collaborative.
My name is Maureen Thompson, and I'm the Program Manager with Valley Water Collaborative.
Wayne Zipser with the San Juan Key Water Quality Coalition, Grower Relations.
Mike Neiman with Turlock Irrigation District.
I'm Christine McKinnon. I'm the Water Resources Manager for Stanislaus County.
David Odom, Daenerys CSD General Manager.
Paul Souza with Western United Dairies.
And Perry, that was the room.
All right, I'm going to just go down my screen, start out, and I'll call out the names. If you would, you all get ready to unmute. Eric Thorburn. Eric's not there. I'll come back. Dick Lambert.
Yeah, folks, my name is Dick Lambert. I'm the co-owner of Lambert Water Conditioning here in Modesto.
Thanks for joining, Dick. Alan.
Alan Reynolds, Valley Water Collaborative.
Jesus.
He won't be able to.
Oh, okay, that's Jesus Nunez. He's our translator and dedicated to the Spanish at this point. Lloyd, go ahead.
Yeah, Lloyd Pereira, Merced County Supervisor, District 4.
Thanks for joining. And my work just got all mixed up here. Let's see, Eric wasn't there. JP.
Hi, I'm JP Cataviella. I'm the administrator for the Central Valley Dairy Representative Monitoring Program.
Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Takeda with GEI Consultants.
Thank you, Jackie. I guess as people join, it scrambles the order. Carlos.
Hi, Carlos Rincon. I'm with EJ Gallo Winery.
Nick.
Hey, Nick Jensen here with California Rural Legal Assistance.
Gudu.
Everyone, my name is Godo Atume. I work with Clean Water Action. I'm with the Environmental Justice Group.
Falia.
Hello, this is Stella Gastelum. I'm with California Rural Legal Assistance.
Mr. Ward. Walter on mute.
Walt Ward, Formation Environmental, representing the East Philoxera Basin GSA.
Thank you, Walt. Isaac.
Hello, everyone. Isaac Arriaga with Gallo Vineyards.
And then Luis.
Hi, everybody. My name is Luis Sanchez. I'm the Community Development Specialist with Self-Help Enterprises.
Jenny.
Hello, I'm Jenny Fuller with the Central Valley Water Board.
Oh, welcome, Jenny. And Dunn, is that Deborah or another Dunn?
Pat Dunn, I'm a hydrogeologist at NV5.
Thanks, Pat. Bree.
Good afternoon, Brianne Vandenberg, Executive Director, Merced County Farm Bureau.
And then M. Guthrie.
Martin Guthrie, Darling Ingredients.
Good, thanks. Julianne.
Hi there, I'm Julianne Phillips, and I'm the Junior Project Manager for the East Turlock Groundwater Sustainability Agency.
Great. And Luis?
Luis introduced himself on the chat. He said he's on an old desktop with no audio, but he is the council member for the city of Riverbank.
Oh, great. All right, and then phone numbers ending in 2569. Okay, and Vicky.
Vicky Kretzinger with Ludorf and Scalmanini Consulting Engineers. We're part of the technical team supporting Valley Water Collaborative.
Great, thanks, Vicky. And Richard?
This is Rich Meyerhoff, GEI Consultants, also part of the technical team.
Thank you, Richard. John M.
Hi, everyone. John Mauder, Modesto Irrigation District.
Okay, and hopefully I'm not doing these twice. Carlos.
Oh, yeah, I've presented myself earlier.
Okay, anybody else I missed?
One in the room, Barry.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
I just arrived. This is Herb Smart with PID.
Hello, Herb. How about on Zoom? Anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Iris Fry, environmental science from Santa Clara University.
Thank you. Is that it? All right, well, let's get started in the meeting. I'll go to the next slide. So you've heard the introductions from the team, the Valley Water Collaborative staff, myself, executive director, then Maureen, Jesus, and Eva are the outreach team that'll be reporting to you later on the activities that we've been doing, as well as Richard and Jackie with GEI Consultants. They've been our plan writers, and you'll hear more detail, as well as Vicky and Barbara with Ludorf Scalmanini. So that overall, next slide will just give you an overview. And well, for some of you that haven't been around the nitrate control program, I'll give you a real high level 30,000 foot, 2 slides background. You can go to cvsalinitycoalition.org and get a really deep drill on what the nitrate control program is. Or you can go back and view some of our earlier presentations on the nitrate control program that are on our website. So today I want to, in addition to that background on the nitrate control program, we'll have an overview of the final management zone implementation plan. We've been working on this for over 12 months, and we finally are on the last stretch here. Richard Meyerhoff will give us an update on significant changes, and we'll be having an open dialogue with that for anybody that has some comments. That document has been sent out for internal public review, internal meaning the group that's on this phone, and anybody else that wants to comment. Once it goes to the regional board, it'll be open for an official public comment period. And then we'll run through the application status. We've been really going to town here the last 6 months and have a lot to report on new applicants and the expanded program with safer funding. And then we'll give you an overview of the outreach that staff have been undertaking over the last few months, and some pretty exciting things that have happened that we're thrilled to give you an update on. So we'll go to the next slide, talking about what is the nitrate control program and who is Valley Water Collaborative. So the nitrate control program was adopted in 2020 by the Regional Water Board, and it has 3 goals: providing safe drinking water to rural residences when their well water exceeds the nitrate standard. And then from the member standpoint, those of us in agriculture, dairy, cities, and others, we have a responsibility to reduce any existing nitrate impacts to water supplies. And then long-term, the goal is to, where reasonable and practical, restore the groundwater quality that is degraded with nitrate. And the approach that the regional board took in solving these problems, reaching these goals, is called a management zone approach. So there were 6 high priority management zones identified in the Central Valley, Modesto and Turlock being 2 of the 6. The requirement for all the management zones is to develop and submit an early action plan that describes the sampling and the replacement water options that we will be undertaking as the plan moves forward. So we submitted our initial plan on March 8th. What we'll talk about later is Richard will be covering some of the fine tuning that's been done to that plan. And we rolled that out, started our sampling in May 8th, 2021. So we're a year and roughly 4 months into this program. And I think we have some pretty impressive results to show you that we've done so far. And then what we're going to be talking about is this final management zone proposal that, as I mentioned, is going to be open for public comment. It is now in an unofficial way, but there will be an official public comment period once we submit this report to the regional board at the end of August. And as I mentioned earlier, deeper drill on nitrate control program can be found at cvsalinity.org. All right, so Valley Water Collaborative was formed by the permittees in the Modesto and Turlock basins, permittees that have nitrates in their waste discharge requirements or other general orders that are involved with. So we decided to form this entity to represent the two basins. We're based in Modesto. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And as you can see from the mission statement here, that our primary goal is to implement these programs and provide safe access to safe drinking water for the residents, as well as enhancing the quality of groundwater used to drinking water into the long term, especially in focusing, of course, on residents in the region. So our structure is fairly simple. The next slide can see a characterization of our organization. We have the two sub-basins. We prepare and submit separate basin plans for Modesto and Turlock. We do that using GEI. So we have similar plans. We have similar conditions in both basins. We are already talking to the priority 2 sub-basins that are surrounding the Valley Water Collaborative area. I'll talk about that a little later. They are expected to get their notice to comply by the end of this year, early next year. Unsure yet at that time, but when they are beginning to develop their plan, there are some priority 2 basins that have expressed interest in joining Valley Water Collaborative. We also have a board of directors that manage the organization. Alan Reynolds, who was introduced earlier, is the chair of Valley Water Collaborative, and we have about monthly meetings. We have formed subcommittees in our 2 basins that are helping provide localized input on the plans and implementation. So far, it's been these meetings where we've been providing updates, but I suspect and know for certain that as we go into the management zone implementation plan, we will see a lot more involvement of these sub-basin committees. And especially in helping facilitate local outreach when there's projects identified that Valley Water will help be involved with in the coming years. So the next slide. So next I'm going to have Richard Meyerhoff give an update on the final management zone implementation plan and then the management zone implementation plan. We have a lot of long titles for our plans, but they are very distinctly different. So Richard, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Perry. And we will use acronyms in a moment, which will hopefully shorten some of the verbiage here. So what I want to do is to start off is to kind of put a timeline on the screen of where we've been and where we're going. And if you go back to the nitrate control program regulations, which is what is driving our process, I would say we're probably about halfway through the development of the management zones, the process to develop them and determine what they're going to do into the future. We started well back in 2020 with a notice to comply to dischargers that are required to comply in a nitrate control program, and submitted the first deliverable for the Valley Water Collaborative, which was the preliminary management zone proposal, or PMZP, with its early action plan, which Perry will be talking about more in a little bit, over a year ago, March of 2021. Based on that, the early action plan began implementation on May 8th. And so now we have over a year of knowledge gained in actually implementing that program. So the next key is the bottom right box where we say we are here. And that is to finalize the management zone establishment process. And per the regulation, you take your preliminary management zone proposal, take the comments that the board has provided on that original proposal and any other communications we've had over the year plus that's gone by. And now we are preparing a final management zone proposal that is consistent with what the regulations require. We are due to submit that 2 weeks from today, August 29th. That is a formal set date. So by close of business on the 29th, the document will be submitted and it will include an updated early action plan. Then the board takes that document, does what it needs to do, and which is essentially approve the management zones, or what they use the terminology is accept the management zones through their process, which does include a formal public review. And then the last that triggers the development, the last deliverable for the management zones, which kind of sets the stage for a nitrate management drinking water program for many years to come. And that is called the Management Zone Implementation Plan, or MZIP. Going forward. Based on current expectations, talking with the board staff, we're anticipating once we submit the final management zone proposal here in a couple of weeks, the board is looking to approve or accept them by January 2023. And then that triggers a 6-month deliverable date for the MZIP. So we're assuming sometime in summer of 2023. So about a year from now. That plan will be submitted to the board. So a lot of work to do between now and then. This all, of course, depends on the board acting on the final management zone proposal. And then once the MZIP is submitted, it has to go through a very formal approval process with the board. Once approved, then we begin implementation of that plan. Next slide. So I'm going to take some of the different components and just now talk about them in more specifics as to what are in these plans. So the FMZP, which we are working on busily now because it's due in 2 weeks, it takes the original proposal submitted over a year ago, updates it. So if there's any changes that we want to make to the original proposal, we have the opportunity to do that. We now need to formalize our management zone governance structure. There's actually very little change that's happening there. The Valley Water Collaborative established early in this process. And so all we really need to do in the final is to make sure we have all that information documented. This is different from other management zones where they may have still been evolving in their governance structure when they submitted their preliminary proposal, but the Valley Water Collaborative started early. And so they've had a very strong governance structure in place for some time. The other key thing that we do in the final management zone proposal is that if you keep in mind, the nitrate control program is being implemented through notices to comply to permitted dischargers. There's a list of those dischargers that are present in the Turlock and Modesto groundwater subbasins. And so since we've submitted the PMZP, we've been making sure, coordinating with them, working with the board staff, and identifying who is going to be in the management zone, who wants to participate. And that list is being finalized so that the board has the record of who is actually part of the management zone. Next slide. We are updating the early action plan. What we've basically done is there was originally a comment letter from the board about a year ago of things to consider moving forward. We've taken that into account and made appropriate updates. We've also learned the early action plan has now been implemented for about 15 months. And so knowledge gained is being included in this update so that the early action plan represents what the best state of the program that we have at this date. We also include in the final management zone what has been done in terms of implementation since the beginning in May. So there's a section in there that talks about those issues. We've already talked about due dates. So the current document or current draft of the final management zone is actually available through the Valley Water Collaborative website. I call it informal public review because it's not a requirement of the regulation, but we want to give some opportunity for if people are interested in looking at it at this time. We are taking comments to close of business on the 19th, this Friday. But not to worry if that's too short a time. The board, once they receive the documents, they will also be doing a formal public review. And by formal, I mean it is required by regulation. It requires a minimum of 30 days of public of notice and then opportunity for comment. So be watching on the board's website as well as to when they are providing that opportunity. We assume that'll be fairly quickly this fall. Lastly, as we've already said, the goal is acceptance by the regional board of our FMZP, which then triggers requirements to submit an MZIP, the managed zone implementation plan, 6 months later. Next slide. Okay, so that's what's keeping us busy now, but we're also looking ahead. The MZIP is a significant document. It is what will the actual management zones be doing into the future to comply with all the requirements of the nitrate control program. And so we're not waiting for board approval of the management zones. We're going to get started this fall and starting laying the groundwork for these documents. There'll be one created for the Modesto and a separate one created for Turlock, so that there will be 2 MZIPs for this area. What we have on the screen here is that the MZIP is kind of centered around in development of the structure of the document, centers around the goals of the nitrate control program, which are repeated on the screen here. These are what are in the regulation. Obviously, we've been talking about for a long time now. It's all about providing a long-term source of safe drinking water. So what are we going to be doing through the years to make that happen? Reducing nitrate loading, so we are improving or no longer degrading water quality in the groundwater. And where possible, into the future, we use the terminology reasonable, feasible, and practicable, restore nitrate water quality in impaired groundwater. And what we mean by that, there are areas of groundwater that are already exceeding the nitrate water quality objective for safe drinking water, which is 10 milligrams per liter nitrogen and nitrate as nitrogen. And where possible, that the goal is to improve water quality so it actually is better than that objective, and so it is drinkable. Next slide. Okay, a couple slides, or maybe 2 to 3 slides, to talk about the 2 key areas of the MZIP. And there are others. We're not going to belabor and talk about every single requirement of what goes into the MZIP, but the 2 big areas that require a lot of attention is first the safe drinking water component, and that is broken into 2 parts. One is the so-called interim emergency water, or what will the Valley Water Collaborative, as the managers of the management zone, be doing to provide interim or emergency water as needed. And in essence, what this is the early action plan carried forward. So as we work on the long-term drinking water solutions, we make sure we still have a mechanism and program in place to address the interim and emergency needs. So it'll be very similar to what we're doing now. Meanwhile, we'll be developing and beginning to implement the long-term drinking water solutions, which we know will take time. Per the regulation, it allows for prioritization. So we're going to look at that and see if there's ways we may want to prioritize one area over another within each of the management zones, whether for Modesto or for Turlock. So we focus on the most significant issues first, but there'll be a process that we will go through to evaluate how we might want to do that going forward. The goal there is to develop a work plan so that we have actual steps, milestones, a schedule that has to be met to provide, in the long term, meet the goal of permanent safe drinking water. Next slide. The other key, very large area, which is aligned with the goals that we talked about a moment ago for the nitrate control program, is what are we going to do to reduce nitrogen loading from various sources in the different management zones for Modesto and for Turlock. So again, we'll have a plan for each area. And this again is 2 parts. One is to focus on what's happening now. And we have the goal of, first, we call an interim goal, which we like to say is reduced to a specific level. We call it balanced nitrate loading. But really we want to get to the final goal is to make sure that we are no longer actually degrading water quality. And so we improve water quality enough, whatever gets to the groundwater, that we, in essence, are no longer making it worse. We'll say it that way. But at the same time, where there's opportunity, the lower part here, where we already have significantly degraded groundwater because it's not meeting water quality objectives, what are the opportunities to restore that so it actually is available and can be used as a drinking water source in the future? So the program, the MZIP includes the program, which we know will take a number of years to implement to get to these goals. Next slide. So what would that look like? Well, that's what I say. There's a lot of work to do between now and submittal of the MZIP, but it's in the context of looking at the various sources of discharge, what are projects that can be implemented. The regulation talks about short versus long-term Definition there is provided, short's defined as less than or equal to 20 years, but there might be projects that maybe take a lot longer to implement, greater than 20 years. What are these types of things? What would be the schedule for implementation? What would be the steps or milestones to make them happen? So we work on those and identify those as part of the MZIP. Create the deadlines for each discharger. Remember, the management zone is made up of a collection of permitted dischargers that work collaboratively together to meet the goals. Some might be able to do things now versus some might require more time. So what are the various deadlines that's built into the MZIP for the various entities to work together to meet the program goals? Of course, that means identifying roles and responsibilities. And ultimately, we also have built into the plan where if we are finding challenges down the road, what are our alternatives? What are some things we thought about that we might do if we're not meeting our milestones along the way? Next slide. And as my last slide is, I always like to kind of use this to illustrate kind of the big picture. We had a schedule up front of the different deliverables. Those deliverables are shown at the bottom of the screen here in the blue boxes. We are in the third arrow from the left. We're getting ready to submit our FMZP. And then there's an MZIP as we've been talking about in the last few slides that we're anticipating by, it says Q2 or Q3, so summer of next year is when we're anticipating that that will be submitted. And then, of course, we begin implementation after the board approves that document. The question we get often asked is, how does this relate to addressing drinking water issues? As one of the slides showed you, there's an interim emergency water element, and then there's a long-term permanent solution element. The red line is what we're doing now. We're implementing an early action plan that began over a year ago. That's the red line. We are at a steady state now of just constant implementation. Perry's going to talk more about what's been going on in that program significantly over the last year. And that will continue. That does not stop until the green line grows. I say grows in the sense that the priority areas that have been identified for long-term permanent solution get implemented one by one. And little by little, we replace the need for interim or emergency with a long-term permanent drinking water solution. So eventually the red goes away. We can't put a date on that today, but part of the goal of the MZIP is to start mapping that out so we can look to the future. And I believe that's my last slide, Perry.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Back up a bit on that for a minute on that slide. Anybody have any questions for Richard or myself on what you've heard so far? And if you would, see if I can manage this and help me over there and Eva identifying folks who raise their hands. I'll scroll down my bar of anyone that has some questions. Or you can go ahead and shout out. One thing that I would add is as that Management Zone Implementation Plan, or MZIP, begins its early development phase and we identify some projects, we will be reaching out to not only this group, but the neighborhoods and communities where some potential early projects may be put in place. Obviously, we need to stay closely aligned with the goals of these neighborhoods and communities as they deal with this groundwater contamination. So we want to just make sure that everyone understands there's going to be a lot of conversations between now and the submittal in a year or more of the MZIP plan. So I don't see any hands raised, so I'll go ahead to the next slide. We'll keep going on. I want to talk about the applications we've received so far and then the expanded program through the SAFER grant. Next slide. So part of the preliminary management zone proposal, the activity that GEI and Ludor-Skalmanini did is they went out and used existing resources, databases, and other sources of information to identify the number of potential wells that were not only above the drinking water standard, which you see on the second line here, over 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate, but also the ones that were approaching the standard, that's the less than. And we were able to identify, the consultants were able to identify pretty significant number of wells that you see there circled between those two categories. There's about 4,000 wells in our two Modesto and Turlock Basin. We've also done some work with other information sources that are publicly available to get the addresses of as many of those 4,000 people we could. And we actually came up with a list of just under 4,000 addresses in those areas that had the high nitrate. And that is, we'll come back to this later, those are the residences that we've been mailing postcards and other communications to. So we started out with a pretty hefty number, and we're, as you'll see here in a minute, we're getting pretty close to 10%, touching about 10% of those well owners. And you see the population below, over 55,000 residences based on the recent census, could be impacted by high nitrate in the Modesto and Turlock basins. Okay, the next slide is a summary of the information that we've collected. And I'm going to hand this over to Maureen. You see the two numbers that are totaled here, 819 applications and currently 290 residences currently receiving bottled water from us. And some of those residents, you see 8 have had point of use systems installed. There is a list growing of individuals that are interested in POU that we're currently working on. And Maureen, if you would, go over the sample results here, explain a little bit of what we've been finding.
Yeah, I can take that one actually. So the graph below just shows what we have found so far and what we've tested. So 69% of the wells we've tested have a nitrate exceedance, which means it exceeds the state standard of 10 milligrams per liter. 45 are what we call a nitrate retest, which is anywhere between 7.5 and 10. And we contact those people again 1 year later to retest their well. And then 20% do not have a nitrate exceedance, meaning they're below 7.5 milligrams per liter. And this is just another way of kind of illustrating that same point, just so you can get an idea of what sorts of results we've been seeing so far. This is also related to our application. In March of this year, we added a question to our application so that we would know how people found out about Valley Water Collaborative and our well testing and services. So this is a graph of what we've heard so far. Since March, we've seen newspaper, neighbor, friend, or family referral and postcard in the mail as the top 3 ways that people have heard about us and applied to the program. And the newspaper, we had a lot coming out when we had the SAFER funding, and so we got a lot more people found out about it that way.
Martha, you have a question?
Yeah, I sure do. Last time that we were in the meeting, good afternoon, everyone. Martha Armistead, Cali Catholic Charities. The last time that I was in the meeting, we had a discussion about the launch from Merced County. How soon are we looking at launching this from Merced County? Because I'd really be interested in seeing the comparison of numbers for nitrate and contaminants in our area, considering that we are one of the most represented areas in contamination right now.
Yeah, so I'll answer part of it and then hand it over to Richard. They are, Merced Basin, sub-basin is a priority 2 basin, and they will be receiving, all the dischargers who are in the management zone will be receiving a notice to comply. It's kind of a moving target based on this plan that we're developing now, or that we're submitting now. And Richard, I'll let you fill in there. We have 6 months, I believe, from the time the deadline or the plan is approved. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm missing the date and the context. The notice to comply to Merced probably will right now be summer of 2023. So from that, you mean to the submittal of a preliminary management zone proposal, early action plan?
Yeah, the early action plan, and also how the outreach component of it. How soon are you going to start getting people like on board?
Well, once the notice to comply goes out, if I recall correctly, in the priority 2, they will have a little over a year, or maybe about a year, to submit both their preliminary management zone proposal and early action plan. So that takes you into summer of 2024. In terms of outreach, so there's a lot to do in the development of the plan. So I would assume that would be starting by fall of 2023, assuming they jump right on it. So you're a little ways out. But then they will follow the exact same process we're following here. So the timelines in general is the same.
Yeah, so there's been conversation, Martha, in Merced Basin about possibly joining Valley Water Collaborative and modeling their program after us, but it's still preliminary conversations. There's no final decisions been made, but all the priority 2 basins are triggered by their notice to comply to start their formation or activities. And as
Right.
Richard said, that shouldn't happen till, I mean, the regional board sends that out probably next summer sometime, spring or summer.
Yeah. My concern is that there's a lot of folks on both sides of the spectrum, whether they're farmers or just consumers that are living in those spaces. How are we really going to have a robust engagement with those people that may be part of that issue, like the proponents of that, without infringing too much on them, or even being able to have them like maybe volunteer versus being sanctioned in any way? You know, that's part of my concern. And the other is with Merced being involved and it being asked to be part of that, I do believe that there are a lot of people that would be interested in participating and helping with that engagement. Myself, of course, I look at it as just a community member because my work is centered in Stanislaus, but I do reside in Merced and I do understand the needs of the community, and I would be really interested in being part of those discussions because there aren't enough representatives in my area that are specifically in environmental justice.
Yeah, Martha, stay engaged with this process. And the minute that group is formalized and begins to be organized, both from the permittee standpoint, the agriculture, dairies, food processors, cities, wineries, et cetera, parallel to that, we will be reaching out, if we're involved, to those community groups to make sure that they're at the table, similar to what we did here in Modesto and Turlock.
Well, that's a good plan. I think that we have to be equitable to all spaces.
Yeah, and it's probably not too early to, and maybe you have this already, to create a list of the individuals or the entities that should be involved in this when that time comes.
Well, that's a definite. Thank you.
Then this slide is detailing our mobile database, which is called Mobile MMS. It has a map incorporated. So the middle picture there, you can see the applications that we've received so far and sort of where they've been coming from. On the left, that's one of the layers we have, which shows us as soon as we look someone up in the system, we know if they're part of a public water system or not. And then to the right, that's kind of what it looks like when we are looking at a specific applicant. So that's what their parcel would look like. And then we can click through to see their all their information and what stage they are at in our process.
Eva, you can pause at that one for a minute. I have a little bit to add to that.
Sure.
We'll be talking about the canvassing in a minute, about the effort that the staff has just started recently and will continue through the summer and fall of door knocking and canvassing these neighborhoods that have the high nitrate. So what we have done in our initial effort is use this mapping capabilities and gone to areas of our existing water recipients, which of course they are getting water because their wells are above the nitrate standard. So we are mapping out our strategy literally by placing a priority on the areas we know have nitrates. We also have the disadvantaged community maps. So we're looking at those two variables and starting our efforts to make sure that those that are around the areas that are already high, we know are high in nitrate, letting them know this program is available. And also just by reference and saying, hey, your neighbor has high nitrates, you're getting free water here. You know, we encourage you to participate in this program. Excuse me. And this MMS database has been invaluable for that.
Your slide too.
All right, so early on in this process, we were approached by a company called Source Inc. And Source has a water technology that, in a layman's term, my terms, is it takes water out of the air. It actually condenses humidity in the air through a patented technology using a special polymer that actually takes literally H2O out of the air and leaves any other contaminants away from the water, separates them from the water. So they are able to condense with the panels you see here. These are located just outside of Modesto near Keys. And these 3 panels produce 10 gallons of water per day. And this is very clean water, ultimately clean water, in that they have a cartridge that they circulate that water through that will take up calcium and a couple of other ions to make the water have some flavor, literally have some flavor, because the water it collects is essentially like distilled water. So this system has been in place since April. Some of you locally may have seen the article that ran in the Modesto Bee about this, and you can see Martha Lozano here on the left. That tap that she is touching was plumbed from that system you see pictured on the right to her sink, and they are able to get, for their drinking and cooking needs, this purified water. And it is a pilot. I was skeptical. Many of my board members were skeptical about this technology, and we're still waiting to see how it performs in our foggy, cold winters with 8 hours of sunshine. The company assures us that it does perform at that time. And once we have identified or made sure that that is operational, we will be expanding the number of residences that we will be installing these systems on. And in fact, I would ask the audience or those here on Zoom today, if you have residences that you know of, or maybe even yourself that you know have high nitrate, I would very much be interested in you providing that contact information to us, and we would follow up with them. One thing that we are insisting, if you will, is that they are willing to have the installation as a pilot, which means we would like to have permission when it's convenient to either bring over other board members or individuals, or in this case, the Modesto Bee, to possibly get publicity on these installations. So I'd put that out to those on the phone or on the call today or in person to keep that in mind. If you know somebody in our areas where we're having nitrate problems, we will be installing a total of 5 of these systems, and this is the first of them over the coming year. Okay, the next, and this is just a few more photos. They look like a couple of or 3 solar panels, and it's technology that's been used in other parts of the country. And I see from Luis, send us an email and we'll put you in touch with the source representative. The company is based in Arizona. They have other installations on the Navajo tribe area in the Midwest and some other installations globally. So it's a fairly new company, and it's all remotely operated. They have cell phone connections to where they can log into these instruments and monitor them real time. So next slide.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
The pilot study, what are the requirements for the residents? Do they have to pay anything?
No, they would qualify in the same way that they would for a regular program, in that they can't be in a city, they have to have high nitrate, and as I mentioned, be willing to have visitors. Because there's some people that don't want people around, but we need this from the pilot standpoint to be able to have access, not just anytime, any place, but with permission, of course, to come and inspect or have conversations with those homeowners where this would be installed.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks.
All right, one thing that we were able to do starting about a year ago is gain access to the SAFER funding that comes out of the Department of Financial Assistance at the State Water Resources Control Board. We were approached almost a year ago now. We are in the final steps of getting the contract signed. We were able to get approval of our project and begin spending on January 1st. And so what the program does and what the state wanted was an expansion of our existing sampling effort to add the constituents you see listed here, And these have been locally identified. In fact, they give us the liberty to identify and recommend to the program what constituents to sample for. And these are the primary constituents that you see listed here. There's also DBCP, EDB, and uranium that are included in the sampling. And we began sampling for these contaminants in May. It took a while to get everything lined up, longer than we would ever imagine, but we started in May and we are currently sampling for these contaminants. And this grant has enabled us to cost share with outreach, the administration of the program, and depending on the income level of the individual, replacement water. There is a income limitation for those that receive bottled water or reverse osmosis. There is not an income requirement for the sampling. So next slide. And here you see a little bit on the cost share basis. If there's nitrate and other contaminants, we split the cost of the replacement water. If there's only nitrate and there isn't any other contaminants, which we have wells that have had sampling results like that, we continue to cover 100% of that replacement water cost. And if there's no nitrate and other contaminants, then SAFER covers the entire cost of the replacement water. And as I said before, we launched January 1st. Our final agreement could be any day now, signature on a final agreement, but we did get approval to begin work on January 1st. So next slide.
Carrie, we've got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
On the previous slide, you talked about income limitations. Can you clarify?
Yes, so when somebody applies for the program, doesn't matter their income levels, they get free well testing.
Okay.
That's for the entire suite of contaminants. Then if they come back with exceedances of the other contaminants, then we have to send them an income verification statement where they have to provide us their income. And then we do a comparison of that income level to the median household income and several other factors that are provided to us by the Division of Drinking Water. If they meet those income requirements, then 100% of the cost of bottled water, of the reverse osmosis is then paid for by the SAFER funding. What we have been able to do without getting income verification is provide anyone with free bottled water who's located in a DAC map layer. I call it a disadvantaged community map layer that was provided by the state board. If somebody is in that area, they are able to get free bottled water without the income verification. So it makes it a little more complicated. We did our best to try to minimize the amount of information we would have to get from the state, but they were quite insistent that with a reverse osmosis system purchased, they needed to have that income verification.
Thank you.
Okay, Maureen or Eva, you want to cover this?
Sure. So since we have launched our expanded program in March, these are some of our sample results we've received. So the first category, which is nitrate and other unknown, means that they have a nitrate exceedance, but we don't know yet about the other contaminants. So the reason this number is so high is because most of those people were part of our original program, but so far haven't responded to our offer of additional testing. So we just know that they have a nitrate exceedance. It also includes those who have been sent to geoanalytical, but we haven't received all of their test results yet. 38 have been found to have nitrate only, meaning that they were tested for nitrate and other contaminants, and they just have nitrate. 67 have a combination of nitrate and at least one of those other contaminants. And 24 have other contaminants only, meaning no nitrate, but they have one of those other ones we've begun testing for.
And easy as this may sound, maybe it doesn't sound easy to those that have been in this business. We've had real challenges with our laboratory, and not that it was their fault, but they had equipment breakdown for it was their subcontractor for the 1,2,3-T analysis and some of the other pesticides. So that put a hold on the analysis of those samples. We were, of course, able to continue with nitrate and some of the others, but that did put a little hiccup in our activity on the momentum we had going once we launched this in March.
How many samples were there total since March? This also includes since before March, because that would be the nitrate other unknown. Since March, it's been, I have to estimate, probably like 150 or so.
Oh, since March. 150 to 200, yeah.
So one thing we did do, I'll reiterate, is that those that were already getting bottled water, that were already tested for high nitrate, we went back to them and said, we have additional contaminants we'd like to sample for. We did not get 100% of our recipients to acknowledge that or participate, but we did get a sizable amount of our existing water recipients who decided to also do the testing for the other contaminants.
Then Eva, can you clarify, when you're saying there's 24 other contaminants only and no nitrate, you don't mean non-detect, you mean less than 7.5?
Yes.
Not no nitrate.
It's actually less than 10.
Okay.
It would be less nitrate. Yeah, but we're only counting the exceedances in this case, so it would have to be over 10 to be one of those first three. So the 24 other contaminants only could be non-detect, but it could also be anything under 10.
Okay.
Mhm.
So one other point on that last slide that's kind of curious. I've asked this of all the groups, and if you have been in the meetings where I asked this question, please don't answer, but I'd like someone to guess, what is the highest other contaminant that we are finding in our drinking water samples? Anybody want to?
I'll guess.
No, JP, you know. Anybody? Shout it out.
Arsenic.
No. Next.
I guess we didn't have the full list. So
Yeah,
we sampling.
there isn't actually one contaminant.
Yeah, I mentioned them. We didn't have the list, but I did mention them. No, the highest number of exceedances we're seeing is uranium. And it's a wide range. We have some barely over the target or the water quality criteria, and some that are quite a bit over the water quality criteria. And as you all know, uranium is a natural occurring element that comes from the degradation of our beautiful Sierra Nevadas millions and millions of years ago, and it was transported as sediment to the valley floor, and then the aquifers took over and started dissolving that uranium. So that is a contaminant that can be treated with RO. There is other filters that need to be added. It's when it's at certain levels. So we're just beginning to address how we're going to be dealing with uranium exceedances.
Are there any plans to include testing for PFAS?
Not at this time. I guess I'm not really familiar. We've got Karen Morgan's on our board. I saw her name earlier. Karen, would you mind commenting on that? Is that a local contaminant we find in drinking water?
It is, but it's mainly around like airports from jet fuel and from fighting fires and stuff like that. It's more industrial.
And sorry, I didn't see who asked that question. Do you know of that being detected in our groundwater aquifers in Modesto Turlock?
Well, I know it's a widespread concern. I am not aware of widespread testing, but since you're now doing testing for other contaminants, this may be a good opportunity, to figure out how widespread really that contamination is.
I can speak a little bit more to that. the UCMR 5 sampling that's coming up in the next few years that the US EPA requires includes PFAS sampling. So a pre-selected group of urban water suppliers will be required to sample for that. But the US EPA is also still working on the limits for PFAS.
Yeah, there are areas, other areas where these air bases have been, where there's problems have been identified. And I know Brianne Ramos with the Merced County Farm Bureau has a little bit of experience with that. Bree, if you want to mention what you know about that, I'd be curious myself as to whether or not that might be in our area, in our current areas.
Yeah, this is Brianne with Merced County Farm Bureau. We've tracked this for quite some time now since PFAS originally came out. I believe there was some funding through the Superfund, and so those have to be picked up in that area. You know, it's mostly found, like it was mentioned, you know, in fire retardant, and it can even be found in pots and pans and that kind of stuff. So it is, you know, wide and far as to where PFAS is found. You know, we've been tracking it because of here locally, we have Castle Air Force Base that was shut down quite a while ago, but it is a concern there. And so we keep monitoring that. Everything's been good for us so far, but it is something that we continuously watch. I can't speak for Turlock or Modesto areas as to what is known there. But I think that information can be readily found, and usually most often it is found in California on those bases, or has been known to be found.
Great, thanks, Brianne. All right, we'll continue on with the update on our outreach program, and I'll turn it over to Maureen and Eva again and run through what we've been working on lately.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak to some of, just to summarize some of our outreach activities. And I really want to mention Jesus here. Jesus is doing our translating. And so he can't do both at the same time. But he's been the backbone, a lot of, you know, he's the outreach coordinator and has really been the backbone of a lot of our outreach activities here. But first on the list is our mailers. So this is since we started the nitrate control program, the launch date about over a year ago. And at this point, we've sent 5 mailers, and that totals around 17,000 people. We've got another one coming up shortly. We've had 14 community meetings or meetings, and this is a compilation of a handful of different ones, but in total, around 300 people have attended. We've had sent emails to both our list and then also, which we'll talk about shortly, we've connected with some high schools in the area, and so we were able to send some emails to their group, which really increased the total number of people learning about the Valley Water Collaborative. They've got about 14,000 people on their list, so that's where that number comes from. And then we've sent or handed flyers out about 900 so far.
Maureen, on that slide, I wanted to point out too, with our postcards that we've been mailing out, we're on our 4th generation, maybe going on 5th generation of changing up the look and trying to not be just the same old postcard going every time. And in fact, our most recent postcard that will be going out will have a tear off, no postage required return for a couple of reasons. And we put our phone number on it and they can send it in to get information or contact us via email. But also we've had a few, I'll call them snarky comments from people about quit sending us postcards. So we have one box on there that they can say, please take us off your list. So we'll see if there are in fact people that are getting agitated by us sending them so many postcards. But anyway, we're changing it up, as I mentioned, trying to just stand out in that massive mail that people get from the post office.
And so a few other outreach activities that we're doing and tracking as well. We've had 9 newspaper articles go out and just, you know, around 600,000 readers there.
with radio or TV ads, we've had both one radio, actually two TV. This is in the last few days now. But it was on La Favorita radio, and it was aired 7 times per day, 1 live event per day, also some sponsorships per day, as well as social media posts. And so Jesus was able to live go on the radio and ask, or have, call in and have them answer questions or ask questions, and Jesus would answer them. So it's pretty exciting. And then also we've sent out or distributed 64 road signs, and then there's other MAC meetings, municipal advisory council meetings, and other public meetings we've presented at, and that's what this number here includes. And with a total attendance of around 400. And then finally, we've been tabling at farmers markets, food banks, other events, and the total estimated conversations that we've had have been 1,700. That includes 34 events. So thanks to Jesus is having those conversations, a lot of talking. The other, thing that's really neat is to track these numbers, but then also in our application, track what's the most effective so far. And we found far and away the most effective has been the newspaper articles, friends and family, and the postcards. We also started canvassing just recently. And so Perry had mentioned an area that is both includes current recipients of bottled water, which would tell us that they're high nitrate, and also a DAC area. So this was our first canvassing area. This is a picture of Jesus on the right, and you can see these are the homes that were visited. And so this will continue. This will be a new piece of our outreach that we started, and we'll continue to do this. Perry, you want to talk about the high school?
Yeah, about a year ago, we came up with an idea to try to engage our local high schools, and went out to Jesus did and contacted, 15 to 20 high schools in the Modesto Turlock basins. We were actually able to get 5 willing to submit displays for the contest. We had a judging last spring, and we awarded the first, second, and third place finishers with cash awards. We had a sponsorship, co-sponsorship with the program with Ready Refresh, and our board of directors putting funding into first prize being $2,000, second $1,000, and third was $500. And we talked to the schools. We came up with that cash prize award approach after talking to several of the high schools, thinking we would go in there offering scholarships, and they advised us that it was way simpler to not do that direction and just provide them with cash awards. There were very big smiles among these youngsters when we handed them $1,000, $2,000, and $100 bills last spring. And as you can see from these displays, they're very well designed. The one you can't see too well is there's a 3D printer output of our logo that this group on the left did. And we've been able to use them. Jesus has used them at the farmers markets, and also Stanislaus County Fair. Wherever we go, we take our posters and our material, but also bring these displays along. And they've been very good attention getters. That's one challenge that we have when we go to events, is to get people to stop at farmers market. They're there to buy peaches and fruits and vegetables and such, and it's kind of hard to get them to stop. But these displays have been very good to get people to stop and pause and listen to our offers for free well sampling. Maureen, did you have something there? Sorry.
Yeah, I did. No, I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, if you're in the room, so one of those displays is here, and you can just see that in the front. And so, as Perry mentioned, Jesus brings that to the tabling events, and it's been pretty successful. Our second place winner.
Yeah, we will be having another second annual contest where we hope to engage some of the other schools that weren't able to participate. So we're going to do that again, because it got us some really good ideas and raised awareness with these youngsters. And of course, we asked them to take the information home if they were living in a rural residence with a well to their families.
Great, so as we've mentioned before, we've participated in a lot of different tabling events. The United Samaritans Foundation, Turlock and Modesto and Oakdale Farmers Markets, the El Ramoncito Series Swap Meet, and the Stanislaus County Fair most recently. We've got some large posters that are able to quickly grab people's attention and kind of what we're doing, and then you can see here the high school display that Jesus has just put up at the farmers market. This is the Stanislaus County Fair that just passed, with 910 conversations in 10 days. A round of applause to Jesus. And some really fun attention at the fair. Perry, do you have anything to add on these slides?
Yeah, if none of you have met Sparkle and Mr. Reflector, you now see them on the left there. And we're thinking maybe we ought to hire them for our tabling events. They are quite unusual. And I might mention that the Stanislaus County Fair average temperature was about 105. So these people walked around with their reflector suits in a very hot weather. But no, that's it. I think these efforts have really helped in the communities for people's awareness of our program.
Yeah, and then some recent media highlights that we have as well. We've had a couple articles in the Modesto Bee, Turlock Journal, Series Courier, and the Sacramento Bee. 9 articles total, and you can see the total readership is over 1 million, including all of those periodicals. We've also, as Maureen said earlier, had some ads on La Poderita Radio. There was a commercial that was played 7 times per day with 3 sponsorship segments per day and 1 live call per day, which was an interview with Jesus. And then we also did social media alongside that. Total listeners was almost 70,000. And we've also had 2 TV segments as well on ABC 10 and CBS 13. Anything to add, Perry?
No, I think that's good.
And then this is, as Perry mentioned earlier, kind of our most recent iteration of the postcard. We're going to be doing our 6th postcard mailing soon, which will include a tear-off portion they can mail back if they want to hear more about the program or stop receiving postcards. So far, we've mailed almost 18,000 postcards total. And you can kind of have a look on this slide at what our postcard currently looks like. It includes details on how to apply for the program and how to contact us as well if they have questions. These are always going to people who are in our area and are in those areas where we think nitrate could be a concern.
Yeah, and I would add too that as you saw in those stats before, it's our 3rd most common way that people are getting in touch with us. So we are continuing to use postcards. It's not cheap, but it does, in a lot of instances, get the attention of folks, and they don't always respond immediately. We get calls days and weeks after it drops. So people it is catching their attention despite so much stuff in their mailbox.
And then we've also, these are some pictures of the road signs that have gone up. These can be kind of yard signs or on the roadside. Some people have put them in their front yard to advertise about the program for those people who are already receiving water and want to tell their neighbors, but also in areas where we've had permission to install those. And the flyers as well, which Jesus distributes at the tabling events and also when we do canvassing as well. Did you have anything to add about the flyers or postcards, Perry?
Yeah, the roadsides, I would add about the difficulty of roadsides is even though during the elections, you see roadsides everywhere, it's actually against the law to put roadsides on private property or even on rights of way. So when you see our road signs, be assured that we have been able to obtain the permission of the landowners to put those signs there. So it's, we don't want to be breaking the law, and what happens is the county will go through and just throw them in the dumpster. So we don't want to waste money on putting signs out where they're going to get disposed or, where we're possibly breaking the law. So we are following the rules to promote our program.
And then this is just a kind of a sampling of some of the social media posts that we have had up recently, which highlight some of the articles we've had in the Modesto Bee and some of our outreach efforts like tabling, so that people know where we are and how they can come talk to Jesus or learn more about the program.
All right, we want to talk a little bit more about the community outreach. This is the list of the municipal advisory councils that I've given presentations to and other groups. And the plan is to get on their agendas again in coming months to talk about the expanded sampling that we're doing. All of these presentations were made prior to the SAFER funding being available, mostly last fall. And the point I want to make for these groups is that anyone on the call today or in the room that would like to have a presentation, it can be expandable or as short as it needs to be to get the program information across. So please let us know. Email us. You got most of you should have got the invite for this meeting, of course. So let us know if you have meetings that it'd be worthwhile to have a presentation to explain the availability of our program. So our plan is to, as you heard earlier, we're going to ramp up this canvassing using our neighborhoods that we know we have problems with. Also, we have the mapping capabilities to identify the disadvantaged communities. And then we're going to continue giving these presentations to community groups, public organizations, continue tabling. Farmers markets will be winding down here in a couple of months. So we'll be there until the end of the season, but we're always looking for other public areas to have our tables, and again, open the invitation for you all to contact us. You see in the chat our email address that you can email us any venues or such that would be worthwhile for us to be participating in. So the other thing too is we're going to continue the flyer distribution, going back to the businesses that we have posted these flyers, given the updated flyer, and Jesus knows the two basins like the back of his hand now because he's been knocking on doors at businesses here for almost over a year. And then as also was mentioned, we'll do more postcard mailings. And then one other thing that we're starting here shortly is we're going to be sending a letter to all of our existing water recipients with enclosing several of the flyers, asking them to pass them on to their neighbors and let them know that this program would be available to them as well. So that pretty much summarizes what we're doing. We're always open for suggestions. This is way more challenging than we ever thought. This whole sampling, the free context is a barrier to many people because they've heard free for so many years on things that aren't free. So any ideas you have for us to break the ice with communities and entities and individuals, if you have referrals, if you have friends you know of that are out in the country with a well, send them our way and we'll get them on the list to have their well sampled. So again, it's open to any suggestion, ideas, and referrals you might have. And also, please comment on that preliminary management zone or the final management zone proposal, either in our informal review or when the regional board sends it out for comment. And again, it's posted on our website. It's a fairly large file, but you should be able to download it fairly easily. And then our last slide, you can send emails to myself if you'd like, or go to the valleywater.org. There's a place to contact us, or that contacts at valleywaterc.org also. So we got lots of ways to get in touch with us. So that concludes our presentation. Any comments or questions or otherwise?
Is there a lot of overlap with self-help, or how do you coordinate events between the two? Good question. Here, did you catch that question?
No, I heard self-help.
Yeah. What's the coordination with self-help?
Yeah, so self-help is, we're working with the self-help organization based in Tulare County. And when we have a well that tests positive for these contaminants, we turn them over to self-help. When we identify them as being in a disadvantaged community, and they are providing additional testing for E. coli or for coliform to make sure the well is in good condition before an RO system is installed. They've also been providing us information on the contaminants, these additional contaminants. We have pretty good information to hand to homeowners on nitrate, but these other contaminants are a little more complicated. So they have existing information that we receive that we are distributing to individuals that have exceedances of those contaminants. And we have all the management zones are on a regular call with self-help about once a month. We compare notes and try to learn from each other's activities of what we can do to improve our programs. Any other questions or comments?
Perry, I haven't heard you, at least at this meeting, mention the bottle filling stations that we had discussed in the past. Is that something that's still out there, or have you guys decided to steer away from that idea?
I heard everything but the main noun that you said that have we been looking into? What was it again?
You had spoke about bottle filling stations in the past.
Oh, fill stations, yes. Yeah, that is going to be part of the management zone implementation plan of doing a deeper dive on identifying the locations for those and putting up the funding. There are other management zones through other programs that have installed these fill stations, and they are not simple. There's a lot of permitting that's involved, and the expense of getting those permits, much less the installation of the facility, is considerably more than we had anticipated. But yeah, that's part of what our efforts are going to be over this coming winter. I expect we'll have some sites identified here early part of next year where we'll be doing those installations.
Okay, thank you.
And Jenny, I see you're on, Jenny Fuller. Is there anything from the regional board standpoint that you'd like to add or clarify that you've heard today?
Thank you for asking. Just that I believe that the priority NTCs aren't going to go out until summer of 2023, just to give everyone a chance to get that MZIPs and everything taken care of before starting the next round of outreach.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, and thanks for all your information. It was a great presentation.
And as we always do, we will have both the PowerPoint and this Zoom recording available on our website within probably a week or two. And again, anytime you have questions or want to expand into helping us in some of these areas, appreciate it. I also saw another favorite water board member show himself. Adam Latwitz with the Regional Water Board, got to call you out. Anything to say on the bigger picture from the management zone standpoint? I know you're involved in all 6 of them here in the Central Valley.
No, I don't have anything. Appreciate the thorough report, and it was good to see everything that you're all working on. And just hope to stay engaged and look forward to working with you all. Thanks.
And Perry, we have a couple hands raised.
Okay, go ahead. You guys call them. I'm not able to.
Guru, I see Guru and Nick. So Nick, Guru, how about I saw your hand first?
Yeah, this is Godo. I do have a question about the income verification. I think that's a big concerning for us from an EJ standpoint when it comes to the reverse osmosis. I was wondering if you would be able to share the agreement the safer agreement when it's completed with the EJ organizations that are engaged in this?
Yeah, certainly. And as I mentioned, we are anticipating a signature, a final signature, and we've been making changes, or the state board's been making changes as recent as last week. So we wanted to get all that ironed out before we release that agreement. But yeah, drop me a note, Gudu, and reminding me of that. It's been, we would welcome any other conversation with the state board on that issue. We are concerned that it's going to dissuade people from even applying for the program. We are stating in our new messaging that income verification does come into play downstream of sampling, if you will. Sorry for the pun, but free sampling for everybody, no income verification. Nitrate only, no income verification. If you have the other contaminants, that's what triggers the income verification. So we took it, if you will, to the top to try to get that as a mapping function only, but the state, because of their programmatic use of that for all the safer funding, and actually most of the state programs that you see in both water and other types of programs, not even related to water, do have that income limitation for that funding. In the enabling legislation, the original legislation from the state had that requirement in it. So it's a pretty tough hurdle.
We'll probably send out an email to your team and have a conversation on this. Thank you.
And Nick, you had your hand raised?
Hey, yeah, thank you. Nick from California Rural Legal Assistance. So yeah, I just had a question, a follow-up regarding the outreach. Seems like there's a lot of different avenues being explored, which is really cool to see. And I guess what I was wondering is if you could comment at all about the extent to which the outreach has been successful at reaching non-English speaking residents of the county. I didn't see much notice of some of, I guess, the distribution maybe of those results, or to what extent non-English speakers are being reached.
Well, all of our communications, print, radio has been all Spanish, but the print has English and Spanish on all any of the verbiage. The canvassing that we have begun, we're focusing on disadvantaged community mapped areas. Jesus, obviously, who is helping with translation, is Spanish speaking. And anytime a person calls that doesn't speak English, we refer them to Jesus, and he follows up with them. And we've had 100% follow up with anybody that needed that Spanish translation. So as far as tracking the penetration, if you will, into that community, we are not formally doing that. We just have, as I said, we've been trying to use bilingual language on everything that we do where that's appropriate. Like for instance, our Modesto Bee articles and such, we have no control over that, but we are, with everything that we can, using the Spanish language as a channel. One thing that you did, if you may have noticed on our surveys of new applicants, we spent a considerable amount of money on the PSAs because we wanted to get them during prime time. They'll give you free PSAs from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., but we don't know how many people listen then. So we paid for PSAs on Spanish stations, and the response was a little disappointing. But anyway, and again, put this out. Folks have ideas, and welcome to provide you flyers. Anyone with flyers that has contacts in that community, and we continue to try to reach out in those areas. Talia, go ahead, Talia.
Hi, thank you. I just had a quick comment on outreach. I wondered if Valley Water Collaborative had thought of the idea perhaps of having a resource fair that Valley Water Collaborative host instead of attending other agencies' resource fairs to table. And the thought behind that is, assuming that Valley Water Collaborative is the one hosting the event, then maybe you could also collaborate with other agencies who would bring in other clients or just community members from different areas, but targeting that to be in one of the locations or one of the areas where you have kind of a majority or wanting to do outreach. That way you are going right into the community, also offering perhaps something, that is of value. And then of course, promoting Valley Water Collaborative. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. No, we have not thought about that. It's an interesting idea. So a resource fair, being that we would invite these organizations to come to a sponsored event to tell their story about their ability to reach these communities?
More so if Valley Water Collaborative could think of like a topic or, recently in Stanislaus County, there was a Kids Connect resource fair, and they offered as incentives to provide to the community free backpacks. But in doing that, they had registrations ahead of time to try to gauge the amount of participants that event would draw in. So if Valley Water Collaborative could do something promoting the idea of water or revolving water, and then kind of highlighting that, and then bringing in other agencies just to kind of expand that or help support.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. We'll definitely talk about that and reach out to you, Thalia, and get maybe some more information on that. And Iris, you have a follow-up on that comment?
Well, it's also related to outreach. Iris Stewart-Fryer from Santa Clara University. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on the canvassing strategy. How did you prioritize where you're canvassing right now? And ultimately, what is the goal of how many people to reach? Are you covering certain areas? Could you expand a little bit on that?
Sure, yeah. So the targeting is done in the neighborhoods that are mapped as disadvantaged community. That's the first step. The second step is, where are we finding nitrates in the wells already? And as you saw with that MMS capability of the maps, we pinpoint exactly where all these wells are at. And then the strategy is to get them to accept a free well test. We have a pamphlet of information, an envelope of information that has a lot of details, but initially we want them to get their well sampled. That's a goal to open the door, if you will. Once we do that, then we find out, and they find out, if they really in fact have problems. And in those areas where we have nitrate, we're relatively confident is the right word, but we're relatively sure we're likely to get more nitrate contamination, or wells that have nitrate contamination. So our goal is, we have a list of 4,000. Our goal is to reach out and get response from 4,000 people that they either don't want anything to do with us, or bring it on, let's have a well sample. That may be a generic goal, but we're responsible as part of the nitrate control program to reach out to all rural residences in these areas that have been mapped and identified as having high nitrates. And the priority is, in the mapping that we initially did, that showed over 50% of our area in square miles has historic data that shows nitrate contamination. So we're going to systematically go through all these neighborhoods using this mapping and record nobody home. So we go back and visit. No, they weren't interested. This MMS database is incredible. We can capture and will capture every single response that we get from a person that we talk to in the canvassing effort.
That's helpful. Thank you. So the goal is to really capture all the nitrate risk areas in disadvantaged communities, where you have that mapped in the report.
Well, yeah, and the only thing I would just add to what you said, it's not just the disadvantaged communities, but everybody that's in these high nitrate areas.
Okay.
Most of them are disadvantaged communities.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
All
right,
hands. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have another hand raised?
No, I was just saying I don't see any more hands, Harry, just to let you know.
Okay, well, we did well. We're right at 4 o'clock, 4:01. So again, appreciate everybody for joining in and reach out to us whenever you have questions or ideas. The high school contest came about Atwater on Highway 99 on the lane closures. I don't know why, but so any of you that drive or think about things like that, please feel free to give us ideas. Thanks a lot again for attending today.